Hello, my History 461 students. This is Professor Donald Earl Collins. We're done with the course as of today. We're past week 8. We're past the final exam period. All discussions are now done. All exams are basically graded. There are a couple of minor issues with one or two of you, I think, but basically done. So the grades are generally in. Um, Not the greatest in terms of exam performance. Some chinks and kinks in everything that was going on mostly because um, stuff that I thought was there or was actually there in the case of week 8 in terms of the readings is no longer there, for one thing. But that's really not it. I ended up giving a curve of roughly 18 points on a 300-point exam. That's basically a 6% bump to everybody across the board in terms of their grades. Um, the real problem most of you had wasn't with the essay. Most of you actually did a good job with the essay, in spite of the fact that most of the information for the essay was not in your readings, or if it was in your readings, it was sort of dispersed, right? But the main pieces for it you had to look for, right? On the other hand, the question I thought would be problematic for students where there are actually two answers because of an error on my part, an actual error on my part. Question 5, the one that deals with the Lyndon Baines Johnson did versus what he didn't do during his time in office. The answers could have been A or D. He could have picked from either of those, and all of you either picked A or D. Both are technically right. What D should have said HUD, Housing and Urban Development, instead of Health, Education, and Welfare, which was created actually under Eisenhower in the 1950s. It got a big bump um, by um, by Lyndon Baines Johnson in the 60s, but he did not create the agency. So technically, the answers could have either been A or D for that one. But the main issue that as a group all of you had was multiple choice in general, not the short answer essay, not the fill in the blanks. It was strictly speaking that on average, students got 5 out of the 20 questions wrong, and some of them in a row, and some of them are confounding to me because I covered the issue of path to Brown when we talked about the 1930s and 40s in video, and in video, and actually one of your readings covers it, right? It doesn't cover it as directly, but both me and that reading in particular from week 5, I believe, week 4 or 5, basically goes into detail about how the journey toward Brown starts in the 30s, right? Not the 1890s, not the 1910s, not the 1920s, but the 1930s, right? I talk about Thurgood Marshall and the march to Brown and so on. All right, so fine, you missed that part, right? And that's what the first reading at the beginning of the final exam refers to. But there are ones where I asked you about immigration since the 1990s and, to the U.S. through the 1990s and where it's coming from. In an African American history course, right? Why would I be asking you about Russia and the Balkans or Southern Eastern Europe if it's the 1990s onward? We're talking about, even if you didn't know the stats, around 3 to 4 million folks from sub-Saharan Africa coming to the United States since 1995, right? That would have been nice for you to know, or even at least look up. Process of elimination tells you that you're not talking about Russia or Russians and the Balkans, right? This is an American history course. This actually would have been harder. But with this being an African American history course, why would I ask you about groups who aren't of African descent? I don't understand. The next question deals with which group has had a consistent, basically since 1965, has had a decline in its overall political representation. The answer is white dudes. When you're 95% of everything, even if you drop down to 60, that's a big drop. For all the all the issues around voter fraud and voter ID and voting suppression and gerrymandering and using mass incarceration as a ways of eliminating people from the voting booth, right? African American representation is still higher than what it was in 1965, right? And again, this is an African American history class. So if the group if you think about the Voting Rights Act of 1965 as a linchpin, a benchmark, or something that's permanent in terms of how we understand the country now versus where it was, say, 60 years ago, then the answer can't be black people. And it certainly can't be Latinos or women, right? So the answer's got to be white guys, right? Process of elimination. And those are the questions that folks got wrong the most. Some of you regarding the Obama question, most of you got those correctly, but some of you, I don't understand how you came to some of the conclusions you came to based on Obama. How was he a Booker T. Washington type? I don't understand that. I mean, they're just some of the answers that folks gave in terms of multiple choice just didn't just showed sort of a rushness to this, and there was no reason to rush. You had no other assignments due between for weeks 5, 6, 7, and 8, other than doing discussion and doing this exam. You could have spent a week on 5 questions at a time on the multiple choice over the course of 4 weeks. So I don't understand why this part of the exam was so confounding to people compared to parts that, I mean, let's be honest, the short answer question is kind of hard, especially when it turns out there aren't as many readings on the topic as I initially believed there. Well, at least there should have been. And the reading, I was led to believe that the readings did cover some of this material, but apparently did not. Um, since I don't have control over the readings of whether links work or not, apparently one of the links I thought was that I excuse me thought was there. I knew it was there at the beginning of the semester. They're not there anymore. So, um, yeah, the average for this on this was basically a 42 out of 50. Right? That's that's an 84. That's pretty freaking good when you compare that to the average on the multiple choice part of this exam. And so that leads me to conclude that more of you needed to spend more time on the multiple choice part of the exam, thinking that you were just flying through getting things correct when you weren't. Then the other parts of the exam, which while they might have been harder, you have gotten more points for. So there's that. Um, but 18-point curve, that's a tie that pushes up all boats. So that meant that no one got a grade below a solid C on the exam. No one. Everyone had a C or higher. So with the plus 18, maybe, yeah, no, everyone has a C or higher. So that helps, right? But not, and so I'm turning in final grades probably by the end of the day on Thursday, May the 12th. And the majority of the class has a B or higher. By majority, that's 25, maybe 26 out of 30 students. That's a lot. That's a lot. And at least a dozen of you are going to end up with an A, give or take. And that means being a little bit loose about what defines an A. So if so instead of it being a 90 or an 89.5, I'm basically looking at if you have an 88 or higher. So if you have an 88 or higher, probably have an A in the course, right? Give or take a couple of decimal points. The rest of you have B's, a couple of you don't. That's pretty much it. So anyway, let me finish up with this. It's hard teaching an online class when you teach face-to-face in the middle of a pandemic when you're dealing with 100 other things, and you are a large class. It's one of the largest classes I've had at UMUC in quite some time. But you are also a very engaged class and very engaging with each other, and that's the most important aspect of this. If I can do anything at all to facilitate that in such a way so that the discussions tend to be rich and deep, then I've done my job. And I feel like I've done my job with you as a group this semester. So, hats off to all of you. Kudos to all of you. Yay to all of you for doing wonderful discussions pretty much from week 3 on. There were some kinks and issues along the way, but generally speaking, good job. Really good job. And the grades reflect that for the most part, except for the final, of course. But no one's perfect. Um, so good luck to all of you. Stay safe and stay sane and well, and stay healthy if you can. Get well if you can't, um, in a hurry. And for those of you graduating, congratulations. For those of you who graduate soon, congratulations. For those of you who don't graduate for a year or 10 years, congratulations in advance. So take care. Good luck. Peace unto you.